I'm just like you. I like art.
My favorite song is Michael Jackson.
I make jewelry. I made this bracelet.
I like to read, eat, and sleep.
Mi piace a scuola, un pochino a scuola.
I like to sing Smooth Criminal and Billie Jean.
I like ice cream. I like tacos. Moi, j'ai aimé à jouer foot.
Red and pink are my favorite colors.
Off the wall. Thriller.
You want to sing one for us?
No.
Me gusta la gimnasia. I love my sister.
That's your brother, silly. You're a sister.
我最喜欢的颜色是紫色。I like taekwondo. I am born to be a leader. We're twins.
My favorite color is dark blue.
I like to carry the torch for Special Olympics.
I am just like you.
I'm just like you.
Io sono come voi.
I'm just like you.
Was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. I decided at that time to start sharing stories on social media to show how we are all more alike than different. It started as a social media campaign, and today it has become a nonprofit. We are so glad that you are part of our Movement Monday tonight. Please click on the link and share with your friends to let them know what you're watching. If you'd like to sponsor a story, you can click on the donate button at Facebook. Every little bit helps. These Movement Mondays are supported by your donations. So today is Movement Monday. It's a new initiative project just like you. Our goal here is to introduce you to people that we feel are making a change in the disability world. People who support and advocate for inclusion, and anyone else who you think we might be interesting, we'd love to show on our show. Join us, our movement, each week by watching Movement Mondays here on Facebook Live at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Movement Mondays are produced by Fiat Media, so we want to give them a huge shout out as well. You can check them out at fiatministrynetwork.tv. I hope you'll take a minute to click the share button and tell your friends what you're watching. Tonight, one lucky person who contributes a question will win a Target gift card. So make sure to comment and ask questions. Before we begin, I want to give a huge shout out to our guest, Chris Barkham. He was our guest last Movement Monday, and we received his comic book, this right here. It's called The Amazing Adventure of Superior Sam, and he was kind enough to send us these. And we hope that you will follow Chris because Chris, The Amazing Adventures of Superior Sam is about how Sam, the main character, here I'll show the book up here again, had a life-changing accident, and he overcomes adversity to be the hero in this comic book series. So it's incredibly inspiring, it's humorous, and it's uplifting. And we just want to give a huge shout out to Chris Barkham and thank him again for sending us these comics. I know we're going to love reading them, and our kids are going to love reading them as well. We will just start in a minute, but before we do, can you please let us know where you're from tonight? We have people from all around the country and all around the world who watch this, so just let us know in the comment field. And so when you join us, we'll give you a shout out for being part of our audience tonight. Tonight, we're excited to have our guest, Heidi Lawyer, with us. Heidi Lawyer has served as the Executive Director for the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities, Virginia Developmental Disabilities Council since 2003. During her tenure, she has significantly increased the board's involvement in and influence on public policy on the state level, with a focus on ensuring full community inclusion for individuals with developmental disabilities. She began her efforts in disability advocacy and policy in 1992 after her oldest son, Danny, now 31, was diagnosed with autism. When Danny was 6, she filed suit against her local school board, which had denied him 2 hours a week speech therapy over the summer. She won that suit in Federal Eastern District Court, with the court upholding a hearing officer's decision for 6 hours a week. Bravo, Heidi. This led to an extended year's services being held more readily available in Virginia and in other states for students with disabilities. Heidi previously served as deputy and then interim director of Virginia Office for Protection and Advocacy, which is now the Disability Law Center of Virginia. She was co-founder of the Autism Program of Virginia, now Commonwealth Autism, securing state funding for the program at a time when supports for children and adults with the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder were extremely limited. Heidi also serves as a board member with the National Association of Councils on Developmental Disabilities. Welcome, Heidi. We are so glad to have you on our show tonight. How are you?
Thank you, Molly. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. Heidi, there may be people tonight who are not familiar with the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. Can you give us a breakdown of what it is and what it does to help advance advocacy in the state of Virginia?
Sure. So the Virginia Board is a Developmental Disabilities Council, and it is principally funded and authorized under the Federal Developmental Disabilities and Bill of Rights Act of 2000. So there is a board or council like ours in every state and in all the territories. And the principal focus and purpose and why the Fed created these organizations is to promote full inclusion of people with developmental disabilities across the spectrum of community life, whether it's your faith community, employment, education, recreation, social, civic engagement, and we do it in a variety of ways. So we have several kind of facets of the work we do. One of them, of course, the most important one, I think, in a lot of ways is trying to influence public policy. So working with the governor's office, with cabinet offices, with our General Assembly members to try to affect good legislation that improves services and supports for people with disabilities. Part of our job also involves stopping bad legislation or actions from occurring and trying to say, okay, this is not a good idea for people with disabilities, and this is why. We also give out grants. We know that services are in short supply across the Commonwealth, and so we look at, we fund demonstration grants to help kind of build the capacity and develop programs that may be unique and could be replicated in other parts of the state. So we put out competitive requests for proposal, and we fund for-profit, nonprofits, universities, usually about $400,000 to $600,000 a year. We currently have grant applications that will be coming in the areas of inclusive education, employment, and housing. And then it varies depending on what the needs of our federal state plan are. We have to tell our federal partners what we're going to do every 5 years and update that annually, and that kind of reflects what our main activities are. We also, as you know, have two very important training and leadership development programs. We operate a Partners in Policy Making Leadership Training Program. Molly was a recent graduate. Yay.
That's right. Yay.
Yay. Partners in Policy Making is an 8-month program that is based on the national model that came out of the Minnesota DD Council. So a council like ours actually developed this program, and it teaches advocacy and leadership skills to people, adults with developmental disabilities, and parents of young children with disabilities, so that they can learn from each other, learn how to work with their legislators, learn more about how the service system in Virginia operates, and so that they can go out and then be better grassroots advocates the way you're doing with this show and a lot of the other projects that you've done. So you're a great example of what we try to accomplish with the board's work. And then finally, we also have a Youth Leadership Academy as our training program. It used to be called the Youth Leadership Forum, and that is based on a model that was developed in the state of California. We take rising high school sophomores, juniors, and seniors with disabilities, and they spend 4 days on a university campus learning how to develop their personal goals and make plans towards achieving those, learning how to advocate for themselves and for others. This year, that program is taking place July 9th through 12th at Virginia State University. We have 25 fabulous high school students who will be joining us from all over the state. And then the other really critical thing we do is we are required to do an assessment of the disability services system in Virginia. And so last year we looked at education and employment. This year we're about to release policy briefs in the areas of housing and transportation. And then next year we'll have another several areas as well. And the point of that is to advise policymakers on the data that's available, the reports that are available, do some analysis of the data, and then make recommendations for systems improvement.
That's incredible, Heidi. That is a lot of stuff there. Were you responsible for bringing in Partners in Policy Making in this for the state of Virginia?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
I was not. Partners in Policy Making, I started at the board in 2003, and I believe the first partners class was in 1995.
Okay. All right. So,
for a really long, I'd love to take the credit, but I can't.
No worries. All right. We want to welcome Valerie, Reagan, Diana, Brian, Donna, Bennett, Robin, and Kelly. Thank you so much for being part of this tonight. If you've just joined us, again, we are with Heidi Lawyer, who is the Executive Director for the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. And we encourage your questions. Please bring your questions, and we're excited to have you as part of our show tonight with us. All right, so because this was near and dear to my heart, Heidi, can you tell us about the Partners in Policy Making? For those people who may not be aware of what it is, and you talked a little bit about it there. So go ahead, Heidi.
Sure. So as I mentioned, it's a 7-month training program where self-advocates, people with disabilities, and parents of young children come together once every month. They come on Friday afternoons, and then they leave on Saturday afternoon. So it's a good day and a half of very intense training. They hear from different experts from both within the state as well. We bring in experts from out of state in areas such as Medicaid waivers, inclusive education, disability rights, person-centered planning, how to work with your legislators, legislative advocacy on the federal level, legislative advocacy on the state level. We do a Capitol Day where we have a mock legislative panel where our partners actually go to the Capitol building and are able to present their 3-minute testimony to legislators that may be able to come, and then other agency leaders who will serve on the panel as well. So that is kind of a highlight of the program. And it's really great to kind of hear all the different testimonies and hear how passionate people are about what they want to try to do. So it is a joint, I think, effort at education as well as teaching leadership skills.
Excellent. Yeah, and I have to say for me, it was one of the best things that I've ever been part of, Heidi. It was.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yes, it was wonderful. I think we're having some issues.
It's one of my favorite program. Every year I say this class is my favorite, so it never gets old.
That's fantastic. Absolutely. It's good stuff. And Heidi, excuse me, I think we're having some issues here with the camera.
Yeah, we lost your picture.
Yeah, so give us just a second. These things happen. All right, hold on. My tech husband, Brian, is here to the rescue.
The Lego King.
Oh, here we go. Hold on. There we go.
There
awesome. Sorry about that, guys. Wonderful. So, Heidi, can you explain a little more, too, about the roles of the DD councils, the DD councils and the board's work?
Mm-hmm. So DD councils really work all around the country, and we work with each other to try to improve the system of services and support for people with disabilities. So if there are education practices that need to be changed, for example, we know that too many children are educated in segregated environments. Mm-hmm. One of the areas that we've been very active in is seclusion and restraint in Virginia. Seclusion and restraint of children in public schools has been an issue, and there have been no regulations to protect those students, although there are regulations in public schools. So we have worked very closely with other advocacy partners and the Department of Education to try to ensure that regulations that are being put forward actually meet the principles that we all have agreed to, and that they protect children. So that's one example of the types of work that we do in the policy arena. Similar work has been done in housing and transportation. We work very closely with the state agencies, our Medicaid agency, our Developmental Disabilities Agency, the Department of Education. So we work both formally and informally with them to make sure that we are providing input and guidance and advice when we agree with them as well as when we disagree with them. And we work very hard to maintain collaborative relationships, but that doesn't mean we don't speak out when we have to.
Sure.
We are very unique as a state agency because executive branch agencies, which are agencies that report directly to the governor, of course, work for the governor. And so the governor takes positions on legislation and other types of budget items, et cetera. And as a state agency, of course, your position is going to be what the governor's position is because you work for the governor.
Sure.
DD councils have independent authority under federal law to advocate on behalf of our positions. And so, unlike other agencies, we are able actually to disagree with the governor's position if we don't find it to be in the best interest of people with disabilities. Of course, we always continue to try to work for the collaborative relationship, and we have had great support from every governor I've worked for in terms of supporting our independence and our ability to provide sort of an objective opinion, or at least we think it's objective, on directions that the Commonwealth should take in supporting its citizens with developmental disabilities.
Excellent. And so can you cite some examples? I'm curious about, you were saying that there have been some examples of where there's been not so great stuff going on. So what are some of the stuff you've worked with?
Well, I guess I can give you one example there was a governor.
I'm sorry, barring the fact if it's not confidential, of course. Yeah.
No. There was an example of a governor quite a number of years ago that proposed the rebuilding of our state training centers for individuals with intellectual disabilities, and there was about $45 million being devoted towards doing some rebuilding. And I'm sure that, you know, the decision was made with everybody's best interests at heart. But we, of course, as a DD Council, support inclusion, and we don't support institutions. And so we did take a firm stand against the rebuilding. We did testify before the General Assembly on those issues. And in fact, worked very closely with another advocacy partner a couple of years later when this was still sort of a agreement or an issue going on to have the first set aside of capital dollars to build community housing. And we did that in collaboration with the ARC of Virginia and what is now the Disability Law Center of Virginia, as well as the Partnership for People with Disabilities. So that's just one example. Obviously, there's a lot of others, but
sure, yeah. Well, I think that's a very.
We don't want to tell too many tales.
What's that?
I said we don't want to tell too many tales.
Oh. It's okay to brag on your work there, Heidi. You know, and I think that's such an important one too, Heidi, because you look at these institutions or the history of institutions in our country, and I feel that they parallel very much to the classrooms today, where they want to separate children with disabilities from their neurotypical peers. And I'm speaking as we go into Jacob's IEP meeting this Thursday. We're preparing for battle. But, you know, there's a lot of parallels there. And we have so much more work to do until these institutions are gone, until the classrooms that separate children are gone. I mean, I can't.
Well, you know,
it's.
I would say that, you know, when I first took this job, I honestly did not think I would live to see a state institution close in Virginia. And now we are closing 4 out of 5. 2 have closed already.
That's excellent.
And 2 are set to close. 1 this year, I believe, maybe in the summer, and then 1 in 2020, leaving only 1 open. So
that's great progress.
It has taken a long time, but it is phenomenal progress, and you have to think about that. You know, there has been a lot of progress. It's just a shame that we still have a long way to go in a lot of different areas, especially in the area of education.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the world of education is so antiquated in their approach. So we made progress in that area. Let's hope that the classroom, the inclusive classroom, is right next to that. Now, I'm curious also, Heidi, I feel this was a victory, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on what just happened with the DD waivers, the expansion of the DD waivers. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, that was a great win to have so many more waiver slots approved than were originally in the proposed budget. And the reason they were able to do that, I'm sure, was because of additional funds that would be coming in due to Medicaid expansion. So that was definitely a great win. We still have a lot more people on the waiting list than the 1,600 some waiver slots, but it's twice as many as we thought we were originally going to get. And I give so much credit to the advocates and the folks at the ARC chapters and some of the Autism Society and all the other organizations that had their people out meeting with their legislators, making those calls, because those are the people that count. It's the people with disabilities and the family members. It's not people like me. I mean, we can work behind the scenes and certainly make statements of our positions and what we think is right and wrong. But what our General Assembly cares about are the people who are directly affected, and that's who they want to hear from.
Absolutely. So we want to welcome with us Garrett, Donna, Leah, Sandra, Erica, Tara, and Jen. and Tracy, who just joined us. Thank you again for joining us. Again, we're with Heidi Lawyer, who's the Executive Director of the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities, and we welcome your questions and just being part of our conversation tonight. So thank you for spending your evening with us. Heidi, we have a question for you. Someone wants to know, can you please explain what a DD waiver is? Fair enough.
Sure. So in Virginia, if you have a disability meeting certain conditions, you are entitled to receive services in an institution. So a nursing facility or what they call an intermediate care facility for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That's what our training centers are that we have across the state. What a waiver does is it allows you to waive institutional services and instead receive those services in the community. So it's sort of the opposite of what we would think it should be. You would think you would be entitled to services in the community, and you would have to waive that to go into an institution. But there's been a long history of support for institutions, and so the waivers came about, and I believe the DD waiver, well, we have a whole new system of restructured waivers, which is kind of too complicated to go into. But what a DD waiver does is it allows a person with a disability, a developmental disability, to stay in their home environment, or they could be in a group home, they could be living in their own apartment, they could be living with their family and receive the services and supports they need in order to stay in the community. That could include things like personal care services, people who are able to take care of you and help you with things like eating and dressing. It can include companion services, respite, personal emergency systems, assistive technology that helps you to become more independent, environmental modifications. So anything, well, not anything, but within the Medicaid program, services that are allowable to be received in order to let you stay at home.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. And I hope that answers your question. So, Heidi, you are really in tune right now with the issues facing those in the disabilities community. What are the current issues that people and their families are facing?
Oh, goodness.
Right
Probably
now?
the people who are on your Facebook chat would have great answers for that question. But certainly people who are on waiting lists for services for Medicaid waivers, people who are having challenges in obtaining jobs. We have a vocational rehabilitation system that helps people with disabilities get jobs, but they have waiting lists due to funding restrictions. We have people who have great challenges in finding affordable, accessible housing, challenges with transportation, and of course healthcare. Healthcare is a huge one, and hopefully we'll see some improvements in that due to Medicaid expansion being passed by the General Assembly. So we think that's a great thing. We know it's controversial in some areas, but we support that pretty firmly. Early intervention services, making sure children are receiving the services they need as quickly as possible for our infants and toddlers who may have developmental delays or disabilities. Just a whole host of challenges, unfortunately.
Yeah, right. You know, and that's something that for us personally in our family, we feel like with our son Jacob, that every single thing that we want for him, we have to fight for. It doesn't come easily. And you don't understand that until you're in this world. And I know, like, I in your bio, you talked about how you had to go to the courts to fight for something as simple as speech therapy.
Right.
You know, it shouldn't be like this, Heidi.
Oh, you're absolutely right. It shouldn't. In some ways, it's getting better, but in other ways, one of the big issues we also see is going back to the education system, discipline challenges. and particularly disproportionality of minority students and minority students with disabilities being suspended or expelled or referred to law enforcement at a much higher rate than individuals who are not minorities or not of color, people of color. And so that's a huge issue. And we have local school divisions who have challenges, areas where you would think they might be more progressive. We have a lot of disparities. So if you live in Fairfax, Virginia, it's a very wealthy county, you're probably going to have available to you some great services. If you live in Galax or Tazewell, no offense if anyone's from Galax or Tazewell, you're going to have struggles finding medical specialists or employment opportunities.
Yeah, that seems very unbalanced. If it should be one, it should be for all. And that's quite unfortunate. And I'm sure that that's stuff that you're working on as well in your...
Yes, that's part of our capacity building responsibility, where we try to, where we give out grants to try to help systems further develop.
Excellent. Wonderful. Heidi, on a personal level, what is one of the most challenging experiences you've encountered in your work of advocacy?
Oh, goodness. Advocacy in my job or advocacy for my son?
Personally. So for your son.
Okay. I think, God, there were so many of them. I mean, like you said, and especially at the time when my son was diagnosed many, many years ago, it was very hard to come by an autism diagnosis. So people were, doctors in particular, were very hesitant to give an autism diagnosis. And so we missed those early intervention years. And so, of course, I wonder, although my son is doing well, where could he be had he not missed those really early intervening years? We had some absolutely fabulous teachers in school. We also had some absolute horrible draconian teachers where I literally would cry every day when I came home or had to go to an IEP meeting. And that was one of the reasons we ended up litigating against our school division. And then when we moved into the transition years, working with a system that felt that my son should be in a sheltered workshop, although he had 2 successful internships. And so that was very disappointing. But it all worked out. And frankly, I'm very fortunate. I worked in the field. I knew lawyers that could help me. It was so much easier for me than for many of the other families and parents that didn't have the level of support and experts surrounding them that I did. So I think certainly we had our share of traumas along the way. I think my ride was probably a little bit easier than many other families. And of course, now I just worry about what happens when I'm gone, as all families do.
Sure.
And, we have preparations and all that, but it's something you always worry about as a parent.
Of course, yeah. And on the flip side, what's been one of the most rewarding things you've encountered?
Well, my son's been in his job for 9 years now.
Excellent.
So I'm very excited about that. Certainly as he's matured and gotten older, some of the challenges that he's had have lessened significantly. So, when he's happy, I'm happy.
Excellent.
And so that's kind of on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, his diagnosis is what brought me into this field. It changed my entire life in terms of my career path and everything else. It's been a ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it always does. I know for me, it's opened up doors that I never even thought about before in my life. And after Jacob's diagnosis, and it does, I feel like life, we have our plans for our life, and then life has its plans for us, and their plans, life's plans are going to win out.
That's exactly right.
So I understand that completely.
But it's all good.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's, at the end of the day, it's pretty rewarding because you feel like,
It is. Absolutely.
you're making some kind of impact, hopefully on some level in this world.
And what's really rewarding for me, to be honest, is, meeting all the people who are out there really working hard to make a difference, especially all the people who are not paid to do it. I love my job and it's great, and I hope that I do a good job, but, I make a salary. But there's all kinds of people out there, advocates and people with disabilities and family members who devote their days and nights, and they're not doing it for a paycheck. And
Absolutely.
so I just have such great admiration and respect for all of those folks.
Well, it's funny you're talking about how people, you just do it, right? Like you're a parent or you're a guardian or some type of relationship to that child. And for me, like even with the IEP, Heidi, it's like learning a foreign language. It's like,
yeah,
you need to go to school for this or something, because I see why parents get intimidated by it. And unless you have a good support system around you and you have people that understand what you're talking about, going to those IEP meetings in itself can be very intimidating.
Absolutely. You're sitting around, you walk in and there's like 10 people and they think they know more about your child than you do. And I've always advised people to take people with them to IEP meetings,
Yes.
Whether it's your spouse or partner or neighbor or friend. Don't ever go alone, because you're going to get involved and engaged and potentially emotional. Somebody's got to be there taking notes and writing it all down, making sure you don't forget what was said, and
Exactly.
just there as a sounding board, because it is very intimidating.
Yes. Yeah, it is. Yeah, well, we have an advocate, and I feel very thankful that we do.
That's great.
Yeah, but it definitely, like, I don't know what I would have done without people stepping in and saying, hey, listen, here's what you need to do in these IEP meetings, because it's
right. It took me a while to figure that out myself, because I used to go by myself with my son's father, and he was very quiet. I think he was afraid of saying the wrong thing, and thinking I would yell at him when we got home. But he took notes at least, which was good.
So opposite of you, Heidi. I love it.
I've grown a lot. I actually have grown a lot over the last 20 years.
I can't imagine you being quiet at meetings. You've got a lot of good information to share. So what words of advice or encouragement do you have for people who want to get involved with advocacy work, Heidi?
Well, I would say use your passion and follow the areas that are important to you. So I think a lot of times people who want to get into advocacy think that they need to work at an advocacy agency or get engaged or only serve on an advocacy board like the Virginia board. And of course, we welcome anyone who wants to serve on our board as well. That would be fabulous. But the way to change the system, I think, is to spread that wealth. We need people with disabilities and family members, if we're going to fix things like housing and transportation, to be serving on housing boards and real estate boards and making public comment on their transportation plans. And it doesn't have to be challenging. You don't have to always be showing up at your board of supervisors meetings. You can be making phone calls. You can be writing emails. You can be signing petitions. There's all kinds of ways to be a good advocate. And everybody kind of has to find their own way of what suits them, what works best for them and their family. There's no wrong way to advocate. The only advice I always give people is always tell the truth. Never, ever, ever mislead somebody. If you don't know the answer, tell them you don't know the answer and you'll get back to them. Because the biggest, most important part of being an advocate is to have credibility with the people you're advocating with. And the instant they feel like they've been misled, or you've given them information that's incorrect, and then they perhaps repeated that information to somebody else, that's when you lose your credibility and you won't be listened to anymore. So no one knows everything. I absolutely do not know everything. That's why I have a great staff that keep me in line and make sure I'm reasonably well educated. But I never will hesitate telling a General Assembly member, I don't know, I'm going to have to get back to you on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's my biggest piece of advice.
Perfect. Sounds good. And we have a question for you, Heidi. So Brian wants to know, when you are not doing your advocacy work, what do you enjoy doing in your spare time? What do you enjoy doing outside of advocacy work? Okay,
well, I have 3 cats, and I used to have a dog. My dog passed away about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So very sad about that, but I love my pets, and so I've always had a lot of animals. We're probably going to get another puppy, so I'm very excited. I love going to the pool, the ocean. We go out on a boat fairly frequently when the weather permits.
Oh, fun.
And then I like to, when I'm really tired, I like to watch mindless television, like reruns of Grey's Anatomy and Law and Order, where I don't have to think about anything. I just watch them and enjoy.
Well, I am so sorry to hear about your dog passing. What type of dog going forward? What kind of puppy are you going to be looking at?
We're looking at getting a golden retriever.
Oh.
We've had a golden in the past, and my son, who lives with us, loves goldens, and they just have such a sweet temperament. We have a grandson now as well, and we think a golden would be really good with him too. So I'm still working on my husband. He's on the fence. Oh,
Heidi, I'm working on my husband too. I made a comment that we're looking to get, just thinking about getting a dog, and my husband said, "Are you kidding me? Like, what are you thinking?" So you work on your husband, I'll work on my husband. Hopefully,
yeah.
We'll both get a dog.
That's right.
So Heidi, is there anything that we haven't covered tonight that you want to expand upon or touch on?
Oh gosh, I don't know. We really, anybody who might be interested in our leadership training programs. We're not running a partners class in this year, but we will be starting recruitment for the class of 2020, probably in December.
Oh, excellent.
Due to budget constraints, unfortunately, we have to run the program every other year. Every March, we solicit for board members for slots that may be open. We have a 39-member board, 24 of whom are appointed by the governor, and so we always welcome applications to our board. If people, we have a Facebook page where we post lots of different information. It's Facebook.com/VA board, all one word. We post articles and legislative updates during legislative session, and just all kinds of information that I think a lot of people find valuable.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Well, if there's no other questions out there tonight, this concludes our Movement Monday, and we thank you again, Heidi, for being with us tonight. And okay, Heidi, we're going to ask you to pick a number between 1 and 20. This is for our drawing.
Can I say it?
Yeah. Tell me so I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to pick my other son's lucky number, 7.
7. All right. Okay. We'll wait just a second. Drum roll. Who's our lucky winner? Oh, okay. All right, Donna Lutz, congratulations. You have won our Target gift card. If you could please email us your address, and we will send that out to you this month. And Heidi, we thank you again. And I had a great time with you tonight. So I hope you did as
Great.
well.
Thank you, Molly, and we'll be in touch.
Sounds great, Heidi. Thank you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.